This is Keep the Faith Ministry News. I'm Hal Mayer. Presumptive Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump stated, probably unwittingly, what Bible prophecy declared about Islam thousands of years ago. Trump berated the Muslim community in the United States for failing to report potential terrorists such as Mateen. Mateen killed at least 49 people in an Orlando, Florida gay nightclub, making the attack the highest number of civilian victims in a mass shooting in American history. They knew that this guy had a potential for blow-up. They don't report them. For some reason, the Muslim community don't report people like this, Trump told CNN. And that reason is rooted in an ancient Bible prophecy and Islamic law. The Quran requires individual Muslims to uphold Sharia law in society, which is not required of Christians living under the Ten Commandments. Claire Lopez, Vice President for Research and Analysis at the Center for Security Policy, and a former CIA spy, says individual jihadis also have a religious obligation under Islamic law and doctrine. Every single Muslim is individually responsible in a personal way for upholding Sharia. In other words, that doctrine makes of every single Muslim a possible vigilante, she said. They are obligated to enforce Sharia on an individual basis. And since homosexuality draws the death penalty under Sharia, some Muslims will take it upon themselves to impose it themselves, even without court review or due process. Muslims who feel a calling to impose the death penalty may dwell for years in Muslim communities in the West, slowly gathering courage and hardening their minds in preparation for individual jihad. They may also mingle among Westerners whom they believe are infidels, building friendships and casing their targets for long periods of time. Trump wasn't saying that all Muslims in America are radicalized killers, but he suggested that Muslim communities harbor killers and do not report them to the police. And while it would be difficult even for Muslims familiar with fellow Muslims who may be potential killers to know enough information to report their radicalization to the police, it is doubly so because radicalized Muslims might also punish those Muslims they perceive to be in apostasy or in support of Western democracies, or infidels as they're called. So they have incentive to keep quiet when they see radicalization taking place in an individual or cell. Westerners think that Muslims should just integrate in Western society and adopt Western values. They try to apply their own rule of law, their own judicial system, due process under their own constitutions to Muslims, but it doesn't really work well. Muslims can't integrate as a whole. The two sides are working with two completely different sets of principles and a completely different mentality. Muslims living in Western nations are quite different from most other immigrant groups that usually group together according to their nationality or religion. Muslims are guided by holy books and laws that instruct all Muslims in jihad. Muslim communities have a different set of complex issues that do not exist among other immigrant communities. Other immigrant communities are not steeped in the concept of individual responsibility for imposing the laws of their religion on a larger society. Muslims living in the West are between the Scylla and the Charybdis. They can't side with the West too strongly or they become targets. But they can't side with radical Islam, which isn't so radical to them in light of the Quran. So they tolerate the violent radicals among them in order to avoid becoming a target, and the wild man dwells among all his brethren. It's not that they are fully on board with the violence. The consequence of the Quran, making individuals responsible for enforcing Sharia, puts them in this position. Trump has made a case for the truth of a key Bible prophecy concerning Islam. Whether you agree with Trump's political positions or not, the Bible is clear that Muslim radical extremists find sympathy, protection, and even support among many fellow Muslims, perhaps unknowingly, at least in some cases. Muslim extremists dwell in the presence of all their brethren, as the Bible says, and while there are no doubt Muslims that would report fellow Muslims that are radicalized and violent, there is still enough space in Muslim communities to harbor extremists. Needless to say, Muslim leaders have to publicly condemn the violence or they won't have a place at the globalization table. But the realities on the ground provide a somewhat different narrative. The stage is being set. People are being conditioned to accept and even practice violence in the name of religion. The day will come when the target expands and engulfs those who will be painted as Christian extremists. And he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. Genesis 16, verse 12. This is Keep the Faith Ministry News. Thank you for watching.